Welcome, guys. This is the third installment of my mystery illness story. This is still very awkward, but I'm going to do my best to tell the rest of this story. So I guess we're just going to hop right in. So the last place we left off, I believe I was talking about how, you know, there was several different things going on with me at the same time. Um, Basically, I took several rounds of a very strong antibiotic by the name of Cipro. We found out that we had mold in our house, and it was just a mess. Now, just to kind of do some timestamps, this was 2013. And if I remember correctly, this started early 2013 antibiotics. So let's move on. So so now I'm seeing doctors, I'm visiting different places, trying to figure out what's going on with me. I went to a nerve doctor, I went to a gastroenterologist, I went to a gynecologist, I went to all types of doctors. I had an X-ray done to see why my left side was hurting so bad. Everything came back normal, except for some like slip disc that they saw, but I think that's from like a car accident I had a year prior. But everything for the most part looked normal. So it's 2013. I go to Nigeria for the first time since I was a child, and I'm excited. I have a sister there, so I'm going to go see my sister. And I get there, everything's fine. And the first stop that we take is the street food. So we went, I think it was Mr. Biggs that we went to. Yes, it was Mr. Biggs that we went to. I think I had a burger. No, I didn't have a burger because why would I get a burger in Nigeria? But I think I had like jollof rice, meat pie, fish roll, like all that type of like good Nigerian food. So about, I would say about 4 hours after eating, my stomach decided that it was not happy with me. And mind you, I'm sick. I really should not be traveling all over the place until I figure out what's going on with my stomach. But because I know that now, but because I wasn't sure about everything then, I was just trying to live my life, right? As a young adult woman, I was just trying to live my life. So I went to Nigeria. Probably should not have. But anyway, so I go, we eat the street food. And again, sometimes when you travel to a different country and you have not, been there in a long time, if you've never been there, sometimes the way they prepare food can affect you differently, even when it comes down to the water. I'm not saying that the food is not safe. It's just that your body isn't used to those particular microbes and bacteria and stuff that they have in the food. So it's not unheard of to get food poisoning when you go to a different country. It's just not heard of. So what ended up happening was I think I had a really bad case of food poisoning. I literally was on the toilet and in the bed for 3 days straight. It got so bad that I was actually, this is probably a TMI, but I'm going to tell you guys anyway, so you understand the gravity of everything that was happening. I actually ended up defecating blood. And it wasn't a lot. So, my sister, she did all she could do. After about 5 days, I started to feel normal. But throughout the process, I lost, I think, about 8 pounds because I couldn't keep anything down. I couldn't drink anything. 8 pounds down, food poisoning, right? So that's what I thought, at least. So after that, everything was fine. I come back home. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna, start this cleanse. I'm gonna do all types of cleanses, just try and get my stomach or whatever is happening with me back together. So I come back. Now it's 2014, right? Because I went at the end of 2013 to Nigeria. We usually go during Christmas. So I was in Nigeria during the Christmas holiday, and I was there for a month. First time I went back in years, I was there for a month. So I came home all excited, ready to do, cleanses and all that stuff. And I did do some cleanses. And again, right now, I'm just trying to tell the story, but I will get into specific remedies, how you guys could avoid what I've been going through and all that. I'll get into that later on in the channel as I record more videos. But so I come home, I do certain cleanses, And everything is, for the most part, is not really progressing, but kind of steadily getting worse. So I'm doing all these cleanses, and I'm going to different doctors still, right? And nothing's kind of coming up from it. And I'm just gonna fast forward a little bit to kind of hurry up and get through the rest of the story. So I would say around 2000, late 2014, I started to notice that my hair was falling out. Like it was thinning, like it was like the edges were kind of getting thin. Mind you, I've always had really healthy hair. I'll probably insert some pictures from when I was younger and my hair and all that stuff. I always took very good care of my hair. I was very aware of traction, alopecia, not pulling too tight. I used to do hair, for goodness sakes, in high school and in my early years of college. So I noticed that around my edges started to thin, and then just overall the volume was kind of just decreasing. And I was just like, am I going crazy? So I would ask my sisters, I'm like, hey, you guys, do you guys feel like my hair is thinning? And they'd be like, no, you look fine. So this kind of continued. And again, mind you, I'm still fast forwarding through the story because I want to hit some of the major points before I start to get into detail. But so this continued, the sleeplessness, the hair loss, the digestive issues continued, the fatigue continued, the rashes kind of stopped after I did the first cleanse. So, but generally my skin was just really, really dry. And I have kind of dry, like body skin. So it wasn't unusual, but it got very dry. Not only that, my face has always been oily my whole life. And it seemed like overnight, it just dried out. So everything was just dry. I felt like I was always tired. And then when I would eat, I would eat a meal and I wouldn't feel like I ate the meal. It was honestly, it was just a bunch of crazy things that were happening. I later found out that is a sign of insulin resistance. But we're going to get into that later too, because I think a lot of people are walking around with insulin resistance and they don't even realize it. So that continued for years. So around 2016, the hair loss just kind of started getting ridiculous. Like it just, and then I started to feel like the pattern in which my hair was balding was kind of like a man. So I was convinced I was turning into a man. I was convinced. On top of which, I started to grow facial hair. Like I'm already hairy, but like it just got worse. So I was just like, I'm turning into a man. I'm going bald. I have male pattern baldness and I'm growing a full beard. I'm turning into a man. I was convinced I was turning into a man. But the hair loss, started to get really, really bad. So by 2016, I was just like, I have to figure something out. So I actually considered getting a hair transplant because nothing I was doing was working. Nothing. The oils, not touching nothing, things that usually would have helped in the past when anytime I had like, some hair fall out on my hairline because of braids or something like that, it would just grow right back. This was not growing back, you guys. It was not coming back. So I was just like, okay, I'll just get a hair transplant. And at that time I was watching another YouTuber, and she had just went through a hair transplant. And that's the first time I ever saw anything like that. So I was just like, okay, I'll go and I'll do my research. And so I found a good dermatologist, another African-American or woman of color rather, that was in New York. So 5 a.m. I drove up to New York by myself to go see this doctor. Went to New York. And she told me that before she could do a hair transplant, she wanted to assess the condition of my scalp to make sure that she wasn't going to be doing a hair transplant that would fail. And when I tell you, I was very, very thankful that I ran into a doctor that had so much integrity, because a lot of doctors that I had talked to prior to that, they just wanted to book the date and me come out there and they do the procedure and not even like examine my scalp. So she ended up doing a scalp biopsy. in two places, the back of my head and the very top of my head. And she, before she got the results back, just from looking at it, she was like, you know, it looks like you have a form of alopecia that I'm used to seeing in Black women, but I don't want to confirm that's what you have before we get the lab results back. But she explained to me that I had something called CCCA. And what happens is that your body, for some reason, starts attacking your hair follicles, and there's basically inflammation in your scalp. So what happens when there's inflammation in your scalp is your hair follicles become inflamed, it scars, and then your hair will no longer grow from the follicle. So I was told that day that there was nothing that I could do, that eventually I was going to lose all of my hair. And depressing is an understatement. I drove all the way up to New York by myself to get this seemingly bad news, and I had to drive all the way back home by myself. And again, I'll start to get into the details of the hair loss with you guys in a more detailed video when I start to actually focus in on specific topics. But basically, they told me I had a form of alopecia and that my scalp was inflamed. And I was devastated. I did not know what I was going to do. I had always taken good care of my hair. I didn't know how I was going to look without any hair. It was just a very tough time. So I made the decision in 2016 that I was going to cut my hair. I didn't cut it completely bald, but I did like a fade. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. So, I mean, I lost my hair. It started falling out 2016. I just decided to cut it. So I kept the shortcut, but that's another story for another day. So fast forward, right? So again, I'm still like, I don't care. I'm in my early 20s. I'm not gonna lose out on my life. I'm still gonna do certain things. I'm still gonna travel. I'm still gonna go here. I'm still gonna go there. 2017, I decided I was going to take myself to Jamaica because I like to travel by myself. So I took myself to Jamaica. It wasn't the first time I've been. I went, and guess what happened, guys? I got the worst case of food poisoning I have ever experienced in my entire life. Mind you, I was by myself. I was on the toilet for what seemed like forever with the trash can in front of me, throwing up all day long. I had to reschedule all of my excursions, everything. Now this, guys, is going to come the turn of events as far as my weight is concerned. So I'm there in Jamaica. The nurses are like, hey, we can't really give you much because food poisoning, it just has to pass. It was the most horrible experience of my life. So I come home, you know, thinking everything's fine. And mind you, so I went to Jamaica in January. By February of 2017, I had dropped 25 pounds within a month. Did not know why. I was confused. I dropped 25 pounds within a month. And for those people who know me, again, I'm typically on the thicker side. My comfortable weight is pretty much like around 150, 155, you know, and not fat either. Like I'm pretty on the muscular side naturally. So, you know, I was pretty solid. I lost all that weight. Until today, till 2022, I have yet to gain that weight back. It has been a complete struggle. Well, what I ended up finding out was that when you have extreme cases of food poisoning, you can end up getting something called SIBO. And that is an acronym for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So you guys, as you can see, my luck was horrible. My luck was absolutely horrible. And I will tell you this, when you are already dealing with digestive issues, SIBO on top of that just complicates things even further. SIBO is very, very difficult to treat. And it's one of those things where there's bacteria, there's more bacteria present in your small intestines than there should be. So what ends up happening is when you eat food, it ends up getting eaten or broken down by the bacteria in your small intestines, when really it should be happening in your large intestines. So again, that was adding to my malnourishment. I wasn't getting any nutrients because my body wasn't able to get it. This bacteria was getting it where it shouldn't be. So now I'm going to do a breakdown on what I was dealing with. So not only was I dealing with an over prescription of Candida, which wiped out my good bacteria and pretty much threw me off balance and caused a systemic yeast infection, which I'll talk about that later. And that's what you call Candida. So you don't want that either. Secondly, I had mold exposure, which was making me sick. And then thirdly, I was now dealing with a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So when I come to you guys and I tell you that the last 10 years have been quite an experience, I'm happy now that I can talk to you guys and be relatively okay about it. But going through that experience was and is difficult. And what I will say is that it taught me that you really and truly have to take your health in your own hands, and you have to be willing to fight, and you can't give up. Because had I given up at the 10th doctor that looked at me like I was crazy and told me that nothing was wrong with me, I would be in a hospital bed somewhere. Anyway, and eventually, so this is part 3 of my mystery illness story. Now, I name all these things to you now, what I was dealing with, because I have a name to get to them. Then no one was telling me anything. I was scouring through hundreds and hundreds of websites, health books, just everything to try and figure out what was happening with me. And I finally figured it out. And I'll tell you guys that I figured it out before any doctor was able to tell me what it was that was happening. Eventually, though, as recent as 7 months ago, I was able to basically meet with a doctor who's an integrative doctor, and they cost an arm and a leg. And she basically confirmed everything that I had figured out over the last 10 years. And we will discuss that in other videos, but this is part 3 of my mystery illness. So as you can see, I have been dealing with quite a bit, and I have a lot of information to prevent a lot of people going through this type of thing, because it's so easily preventable. It's so easily preventable. And I guess I'm just going to put myself out there as an example, because I'm still here. I'm still living. I'm still breathing. I'm still trying to live a great life, you know. It for a while it does make you feel like it's never going to end. I mean, 10 years is a long time. I was 23 when all this started, and I'm 33 now. So I have a lot of information that I feel and I know will be very helpful to everyone. So again, thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.